you so much for watching my video. My name is Breezy and I'm a yoga teacher. I specialize in trauma-informed practices such as yoga, and I like to consider topics like today's to be yoga off of the mat. Now, this work is so important to me because I truly believe that introspection is healing the mind, the body, so that we can bring it together and connect back to spirit. And once we do that, we are able to honor ourselves in such a way that we live our lives to inspire ourselves and in turn inspire others. So one way to get there is to begin to dig into shadow work. Now, if you've been hearing this terminology and you do not know what it is, don't you worry, because we are going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we begin, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, that little bell notification. And if you like the information in today's video, I would be so grateful if you gave me a thumbs up. So let's get started. Now, shadow work is exactly how it sounds. It's like stuff that's lurking in the shadows, except that stuff is your stuff. Now, before we break it down, let's talk about the infinite wisdom of our human biology. Now, we have what we call the old lizard brain. That is the amygdala. That is your fight, flight, or freeze response center. So, for instance, many moons ago, we used to have to really worry about being clawed to death by those angry big bears or tigers or lions. And so now it's instinctual for us to want to protect ourselves so that we can survive and continue populating the world. So one of the things that we try to teach ourselves is to get out of that old amygdala, that old lizard brain, because humans are so amazing that we are the only ones that can think about the future, plan for the future, while also analyzing the past and being also afraid of what has happened before, which prevents us from flourishing in the future. So now you can see why we want to do that mystical shadow work. We really just want to free our minds. Now, our frontal lobe is allowing us to really think, to be analytical, to be emotionally aware, to do all of these really great things, to be the scientist of our own lives. And guess what? You're in the lab right now. But many of us live in that fight, flight, or freeze response centers, especially those of us who are trauma survivors, but not quite yet thrivers. And that is the work that we are trying to do on our lives. And shadow work helps us to get there much quicker. Even though the work is triggering, it can be really scary and it can make us feel really insecure. But once you get through, trust me, you are going to be a thriver on the other side, living at your highest vibration. Okay, so now that I've said all of that, let's talk about this shadow work. Now, shadow work is really important because, as I mentioned, this is information that is living somewhere deep, deep, deep in our subconscious. Now, why is that? Now, what's really amazing about the infinite wisdom of our biology is that not only do we have that amygdala, but our nervous system tries to protect us from ourselves. It is constantly tensing up the muscles, preparing us to survive because, let's face it, there was a time where many moons ago, our ancestors, like I mentioned, could die like that. And we are all a testament that we come from really strong and smart people. So when I teach yoga, I always teach my students that breath work is the most important fundamental part of practice. It is not about the poses, it's not about the postures, it's not about being in handstand or anything fancy that you might see on Instagram. It is all about breathing. Calming your mind, calming your body. Now, what does that mean? Calming your mind, that old amygdala, calming the body, the nervous system. Now, if you do not breathe, this is what happens. When you're in yoga class, whether you practice yoga or not, you can still kind of understand what I'm saying. And let's just say you're standing on one leg. Now, if you're standing on one leg and you're not breathing through it and you're not feeling safe and secure standing on one leg, and you start to sort of hyperventilate, get a little anxiety in the body, start to wiggle around, your old amygdala has no idea that you're just standing on a yoga mat with one foot on the ground and the other foot balancing, and that you're safe, you're not gonna die. What ends up happening is you start to get even shorter in breath, to the point where now your nervous system tenses up because it actually might think you're on the edge of the cliff about to fall to your death. That is how serious the mind-body connection truly is. Now, if you've ever suffered from trauma, those who have suffered from sexual abuse in particular have possibly disassociated from their body. So they really don't know where they're at in time and space, which means they don't feel safe, they don't feel secure, they don't feel grounded, they don't feel like they can honor their boundaries, they don't feel like they have any sacred space. And this is a problem. This is a problem for so many reasons, but for today's topic, this is a problem because until we feel safe, secure, and grounded, we feel like we can create boundaries, we can honor them, we can say no, things of that nature. It's going to be really difficult to do any shadow work. We really have to first figure out where we're at on that spectrum. I have many other videos on Love Breezy Bree, as well as yoga podcasts. All the links are in the show notes, where you can figure out how to ground your energy. You do not have to be a yoga practitioner. There are many ways to ground your energy with mindful practices, intentional practices, meditative practices, just walking through nature, surrounded by trees, the sun shining, is all grounding. So I don't want to digress. Now, shadow work. Once you feel pretty comfortable doing this work, the best way to get to it is by journaling. You can write things down, you can speak them out and record them. You can write letters to different people, but burn them later. This is work of being able to, I guess it opens up that sacral chakra space, which is all about creativity, because when we're writing, we're speaking, we're writing a song, we're playing an instrument, we're getting our information, our vulnerabilities out there. We're also being creative, which means we feel rooted first, and then we're starting to feel really aligned with who we are. And we start to do the work. And once we do the work, the self-empowerment, the compassion, the forgiveness of past transgressions of others to us and us to others start to heal. We start to really be able to listen, to recognize, to trust ourselves. Listen, recognize, trust ourselves. And then, of course, others. But until you're able to do this work for yourself, you're always going to be mirroring who you are off of another person. And that is scary, because the other person's intentions may not be in your best interest, or they may not have done the work of their lives. So it's like the blind leading the blind. And ultimately, you are responsible to be accountable for you having the honor, the gift of life, of living. And so again, journaling, being grounded, understanding what your triggers are, understanding if you feel safe, if you have sacred space, if you can just sit and breathe and focus on breath, calm yourself, if you're able to make the mind-body connection, if you have spiritual connection back to self, all of these are going to really prepare you to begin to do the shadow work. Now, shadow work, as I mentioned, can be very scary. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about some really helpful tips to help you do the work.